Ebony, and welcome to Motivation to Write podcast, where each week I interview an expert ranging from entrepreneurs to CEOs to psychologists to therapists to marketers, and they offer their advice and knowledge to help writers like you and me step into our greatness and live up to our writing potential. Hi, I'm really excited because today we have Kuda Biza, who is a serial entrepreneur and author. He is going to share with us 5 steps to achieve balanced success and fulfillment, and I think you're going to love him. But before we get to Kuda, I have a few announcements. My virtual cocktail party for women who write is now open for RSVPs, but you need to sign up soon because space is limited to 8 participants. I'm very excited about this. This is my second virtual cocktail party. I had one last month. It was lots of fun. So this month we are going to discuss marketing, we're going to discuss self-care, we're going to discuss confidence, and I'm just going to share things that I've learned since last month from speaking to so many different people, and everyone else will share out their thoughts and their ideas, and it's just a really great space to celebrate creativity, to offer encouragement and advice, and I love it. So make sure that you head over to Zazo.com and then under events, click virtual cocktail party to reserve your spot. RSVPs close next Friday, which I cannot think of the date right now. I think next Friday is the 16th. I had to push back the 7-day affirmation challenge to November because I am booked in October with so many fabulous people to talk to. So that will take place November 8th through the 15th, and you can just look for more information in the coming weeks about it. I'm excited because this is an event that is designed to transform our minds. If we can transform the way that we see ourselves as writers, the way that we see our audiences, the way that we see our blogs, the way that we see our writing capacity, then we can really begin to change our lives. So look for information in the upcoming weeks about the 7-day affirmation challenge, and that begins November 8th and it runs through the 15th. And now, without any further ado, let's learn some more about our guest today, Kuda Biza. Kuda Biza is a serial entrepreneur who started his first company when he was 9 years old in Zimbabwe. He moved to the U.S. with only $40 in his pocket to study at Lynn University, where he started his second company. Kuda then spent over a decade in various roles at a Fortune 500 company responsible for launching multi-million-dollar strategic new growth initiatives. Currently, he is the co-founder and CMO of Nonbelievable, a socially conscious baked goods company that donates meals for every box of cookies sold. Kuda has also built 6 businesses and a nonprofit. He is also the author of the recently released The Spear Method, 5 Simple Steps to Achieve Balanced Success and Fulfillment. Kuda is full of wisdom, and today he is going to share those 5 simple steps with us. Thank you so much for joining me because I'm really excited to talk to you. First of all, I have to tell you that I purchased your book like 2 days ago, and I was really excited because I was like, oh my gosh, I get to talk to him about the book. And then when I saw that you booked like this week, I said, oh, I'm not going to get to read it that quickly. So I'm hoping that you can come back in the future and we can just talk about your book because it looks amazing. I mean, I'm so excited to get to read it. The reviews are great and it's just wonderful. So you're an entrepreneur, and
Yes.
And I'm just really interested to hear about this business that you started when you were really young. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so it actually happened because of need. Have you ever heard of the statement, necessity is the mother of invention?
Right, yeah.
So that's how it came about. It was a hot summer day. I went to my mom and I was like, hey, can I get an ice cream? And I'd been naughty that morning. So she said, no, as a way to punish me, And it's kind of like, got on to me to say, like, how can one person control things in my life, right? If she decides that I'm not going to have an ice cream, I'm not going to have an ice cream. So it's kind of like, was like one of those real moments when I was 9. I was like, you know what? I need to take control. I wanted to become a thermostat and not a thermometer. The difference between the two is that a thermometer only reads the temperature and reacts to it, but a thermostat controls. So I saw my neighbors' windows that they were dirty, and I was like, you know what? This is my moment. I have nothing to lose. I can just go to her house and ask if I can clean the windows. The worst she's gonna say is no. But if she says yes, I now have money for ice cream. So I literally took a bucket, my mother's cleaning supplies, right, to put salt on the wound. And I went over to my neighbor's house and I asked her, like, hey, can I clean your windows? So I didn't know if it was because of my pitch that I was a really good salesperson, or she really just felt pity. Like, oh, this 9-year-old kid, he wants to make a quick buck. All right, do it. And then I did it. And I learned 2 things. I learned, number one, window cleaning is hard. I'd never washed a window before that day. It was super hard. I thought it would take me like 30 minutes. It ends up taking 3 hours.
Oh my gosh. How many
Yeah,
windows was that?
like an entire house. So
Okay.
think of it like a, 5-6 bedroom house. So it
Yeah.
was like the
Okay.
entire house. And, I was short, so I had to like get a chair, and do all
Right.
that stuff.
Yeah.
But I also learned that when you solve a person's problem, you're rewarded. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. As entrepreneurs, you're just a problem solver. You're looking for things in people's lives that, they struggle with, and you're just giving them solutions. So if you're an author, the solution is a book. If you're a blogger, the solution is the content that you're offering to your reader. So in a sense, you're also an entrepreneur. It's just that you're providing your product or service more in written form. But anyway, that was kind of like what I learned. And then after doing that same process at a few more houses, I was like, you know what? I need to get people to actually do the cleaning, and I just do the sales. So I got 2 of my buddies to do the cleaning, and then I was doing the sales. So
oh my gosh, I love that. And you were 9 years old and your buddies were around the same age?
yeah,
That's
we're in the
crazy.
same, we're like in the same grade. So we would be paid $5. I would keep 3, and I'll pay my friends $1 each. But for them, they were thrilled because this was money that they didn't have. And it was the 2 of them, and they were happy. Like, they were doing it together. Like, when you're doing it with someone else, I think the time passes quickly. When I started, I was just doing it by myself. So it's like 3 hours as a 9-year-old. It's like and you hear your friends, they're like playing outside and doing all this fun stuff, and you're missing out. But you have to be disciplined enough, because like, if I don't finish this, my life will never change, right? I have to follow through on this. And oh, by the way, I want to make the $5 so that tomorrow when the ice cream truck rolls around, I don't have to ask mom. I'm a big boy now. So there was a little bit of ego and pride involved as well,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I did it, and it laid the seeds for, my entire life up until now.
Right, right. I think it's fantastic how at that young age, you already saw like yourself as an independent person. And you saw that there was an issue that needed to be solved, the windows that needed to be cleaned, and you capitalized on it, and you got some friends to help you out. I very rarely do you see little kids doing that, right? So
Yeah.
that's pretty, yeah, that's great. So fast forward years later,
Mm-hmm.
the non-believable cookies. Am I
Mm-hmm.
saying that? Okay, how did that happen?
Yeah, well, the unbelievable story, I think, you need to hear everything that happened in between. Because in life, one of the things I've learned is that you can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards.
Huh.
So, I will share a couple of things, and then you'll see why I share those things, because it all culminates to where I am today.
Okay.
So we spoke about me studying a business when I was 9. And then about a year or so later, I grew up in Zimbabwe. So I was in Africa, right? And public education is not free.
Mm.
So when I would be walking to school in the morning, I would walk 2 miles to go to school. There were kids in my neighborhood that I would see who were in pajamas, but I'm in school uniform and I'm going to school. And I always used to think like, hey, isn't that cool? They're homeschooled or they don't even go to school. I would want to be them. But later on, I find out that the reason why they were not going to school was because they lived with their grandmother. They were orphans. Both of their parents had died, and they didn't have money to pay for school fees. So for me, I just had this, like they say, like curiosity killed the cat. In my case, curiosity did not kill the cat. It actually awakened the lion, because I was like raged, like, hey, you have the government, you have like all these, the society people, parents and whatnot, who are not helping these kids out. So like, if the people in Zimbabwe can't make a difference, I need to leave the country and make something of myself so I can make a difference. So that became the trigger for me to want to come to America. So I just wanted to set that stage so you understand kind of like my journey and how all these milestones enabled me to come here. So fast forward to high school. I came from a lower middle class family. There was no way my parents could have afforded an American, college. So whenever I would tell my friends like, hey, after this, I'm going to America, everybody would look at me like, dude, like, what are you smoking? Like, it doesn't happen to us, right? Like, it's like 30, 40,000 for you to go to an American school. Where are your parents going to get the money? But sometimes in life, there's a difference, right, between seeing and having a vision, right? Seeing is seeing what's physically in front of you. And having a vision is seeing beyond that, right? Looking into what's possible. So I didn't limit my sight to just seeing what's there, or the realities, or in fact, the restrictions or the barriers. I looked into, hey, these are the possibilities. Yes, I might be a kid, whose dad works at the post office and we're a single income family. Yes, I might be the kid who can't even afford to pay for the SAT exam in order for me to actually apply, but I'm not going to lose this vision. So what I then did is I decided to become resourceful versus looking at the resources to say like, hey, I don't have this, I don't have this, but you can be resourceful. So I started working at the internet. I had an internet cafe, night shift, because the resource that I needed was internet. I needed the internet to study. I needed the internet to apply for my college applications. And by getting the job, I was now able to have money to pay for my SATs and all that stuff. So I end up applying to all these schools during the night, because the internet cafe would close at 11 p.m. And then I would work on my own personal stuff using the free internet from 11 until 6 in the morning.
Wow.
And I applied to so many different schools. And then I end up getting accepted at the last school that I applied to, the very last school. I almost didn't apply to Lynn, but that was the last school I applied to. They gave me a DIN scholarship, which covered 50% of my tuition. And someone who had seen my journey, it was a 2-year journey between the point I had finished high school to the point when I finally came. And a lot of people were laughing at me, and they were kind of like thinking I was crazy, because I actually turned down an opportunity to go to university in Zimbabwe, because I knew if I took that, it would then become that distraction that would stop me from being all in. Because sometimes when you want something in life, you have to be all chips in, like burn the bridges to all other options so that that dream is the only option. So that's kind of like the strategy I did when I was a teenager. And then I came to America. And then when I was in America, I then started thinking about like, hey, you wanted to come to America so that you could make a difference, right? Remember those kids. So I started my first social entrepreneurship company when I was in college with $150. And it was a t-shirt company. And the whole premise was we would donate 20% of our profits to educate children in Africa. So grew that business, ended up educating hundreds of children in Zimbabwe, in Ghana, in Tanzania, and South Africa. And by the time I graduated, I got hired by a big Fortune 500 company for what I would call a dream job. The job they gave me at the time was to create companies. because on my resume, they'd seen that I had started a company in college, and they were looking for entrepreneurs who were not like stuck in their ways, or like, like when you're in the corporate world, you then kind of like, you have a certain framework of thinking. They wanted people who were like, new and looked at things differently. So I was an ideal candidate, right? So I went in there and I created multiple businesses from scratch. So I had the backing of a multi-billion-dollar company, their processes, their systems, everything. And all I just had to do was come up with ideas, validate the business case, and then I'll get funding from the leadership and we'll go do it. So I launched a meal delivery system under the Crockpot brand. So have you ever heard of Crockpot slow cooker?
Oh, yeah, Crockpot, yeah.
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 So do you like slow cooking?
I actually don't, but my cousin likes to prepare stews and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think yeah.
So anyway, you have this kid from Zimbabwe who came from Zimbabwe with $40 in his pocket, who's now creating these businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses in this big Fortune 500 company. So create that meal delivery business. We end up, scaling it, and then having a successful strategic alliance with Omaha Steaks. So if you go to omahasteaks.com and you search slow cooker meals, you see those meals on their website. That's the business that I built. So once, that took off, they asked me like, okay, what else do you want to do within the company? So I was like, e-commerce is taking off. Let me work on Amazon and all these other things. So I end up spending over a decade in this multinational company, right? And then in around 2018, like around Thanksgiving time, I get a call. Remember, I'm still at this big Fortune 500 company, right? I have launched multiple businesses there. I'm now running like a $75 million e-commerce division at the time. I'm very successful on the outside, right? I'm paid well, everything is good, but I'm not fulfilled because I wasn't operating in my purpose, because my purpose was to make a difference, right? To change lives. So I get this call and they go like, hey, Kuda, you need to come in the city, in Manhattan. There's an interesting opportunity that we just want you to take a look at. Maybe it might interest you. So, I'm always one to never turn down a conversation, right? Because you never know what you'll find. So I went to the meeting and they tell me there was a man who was on his way to San Francisco and he learned about a group of nuns that were being evicted. So these nuns were being evicted. So I'm saying to myself, who evicts nuns, first of all, right? And who is this man? So anyway, they keep telling me the story. So the man gets there, he goes to see the nuns, he cuts them a check so that they don't get evicted. He calls up a couple of his friends, they raise some money, and they find like they solve their living situation, right? I think they end up buying the building or buying a new building, but anyway, they solved the problem for the nuns. But they learned quickly that the nuns were baking cookies and they were selling the cookies at farmers markets. And what they would do with the money, instead of looking after themselves and paying rent, they were using the money to support a soup kitchen. And that soup kitchen was feeding about 400 people every day. So they were selfless. So this guy is like, wow, if we can take inspiration from these nuns and create a cookie company where we have a buy one, give one model, wouldn't that be something? So this guy calls another guy, the guy who I'm in the office in New York, and they were like, hey, let's capitalize the business, but we need an entrepreneur who understands social ventures, and an entrepreneur who understands the food business. I ticked both boxes. I created a social venture when I was in college, and I created a food business when I was with Crockpot Cuisine. So that's how my name came up on the list. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, this is interesting. So who is this guy who met the nuns? And they go, it's Tony Robbins. So I'm like, what? Tony
Wow.
Robbins? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm interested. So anyway, I go back and I quit my job and I come and I partner with Tony Robbins and Michael Loeb, the gentleman I was at the office for, and we formed an Unbelievable. So I became the co-founder and chief marketing officer, and it's in alignment with my purpose because what I want to do is build profitable companies, right? That solve two of the world's biggest problems. Number one, education, and number two, hunger. So that's why with Unbelievable, for every cookie that we sell, we donate a meal through our partner, soup kitchens that enable us to do that. So we work with about 7 organizations across the country, and we're fighting hunger the delicious way, right? Because when you're eating a delicious cookie, someone gets to eat a meal. So it was important for me to kind of like show you the connection between how I started a social venture, how I went into a big multi-conglomerate company and built businesses there. And those 2 dots led me to the 3rd dot, because if none of those 2 happened, probably my name wouldn't have been in the hat when these guys were looking for someone to come, join them and take this vision and turn it into reality.
That's an incredible story. And yeah, I can see why it's important to connect all those dots. And there's so much to unpack in what you said. Like, I love how you said that the difference between seeing versus having a vision, and this concept that you're always able to come up with ideas, which is speaks to creativity and how important that is in entrepreneurship, and then operating within your purpose. So if we could kind of bring all of this to like the level of a writer or a blogger or an author who kind of wants to take their blog or their book to the next level, or even just put their work out there, create a presence online, how important is it that they have a vision for themselves?
Well, so I'm actually an author, right? I wrote my book, The Spear Method, right? And in the Spear Method, I have 5 simple steps for balance, success, and fulfillment. So my assumption is, if you're a writer, if you're a blogger, writing gives you some sort of fulfillment, and you want to see your blog or book become successful. So the 5 steps I actually share in there will help you accomplish both. Because sometimes in life, you always find people who are just pursuing success and they forget about being fulfilled, or the people who are just focused on being fulfilled and forget about, oh, you need to pay bills, you need to be successful. And sometimes for you to make a difference, you actually need to have the money, right? So you talk about the things that I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to feed 1 million people in 2 years. You can't do that when you're poor, right? You have to have a vehicle that generates the funds to make that difference. So anyway, my advice would be, number 1, and I'm just going to walk you through the Spear Method because it all makes sense. So number 1, you need to seek your purpose. That's what the S in the Spear Method stands for. So you really need to understand, what's your purpose? What's your life calling? What's your why? Because when you have clarity on your why, right, it would mean that whatever you then write about, or whatever you then apply your energy to create, right, it's in alignment with your reason for being. There are a lot of people out there who are just living life, not knowing why are they born, right? So it's super important to do that first step. And in the book, I talk about, different steps you can take, a process that you can take if you don't know your why, to actually get it. One simple tip I can give, which I also share in the book, is email 5 people who know you really well, and then just ask them, hey, what makes me unique? Just that one question. And then they'll send you all these different emails. And then when you read through them, you're going to find common threads. And then that will give you direction on what your purpose is. But the second thing is, you want to plan. So we're talking about...
Before you get to the second one, that first
Sure.
point, that's a huge, I think a lot of people are struggling. I guess they should read your book. But when you tell someone to find your purpose, I mean, it feels almost like an insurmountable obstacle. Like, how do I is, do I have a purpose? First of all, do you believe everyone has one purpose, or do people have multiple purposes? Because I was speaking with an author a few days ago, and she didn't start writing until she was in her 50s. So, and she feels that writing is her purpose, but she didn't find that later in life. So surely she had a purpose prior to 50 that she was fulfilling, right?
Well, only she can answer that. But to answer your question, I think you can have multiple purposes in different phases of your life, right? But also you need to think about individuals as multidimensional. So, for instance, who am I, right? I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a nephew, I'm an investor, I've all these different facets, right? And
Right.
yes, there might be like one common sentence that defines my purpose, but there are so many different purposes in life. And I also believe that you live life in 3 stages. And in those 3 stages, there might be one dominant purpose that obviously all arcs to like one common purpose. But I can explain what I mean. So stage 1 is learning, right? So the first third of your life, you're learning, you're going to school, whatever, right? And then you graduate. And then you go into your second stage, which is earn. We are now making money. You're working and so forth and so forth. So there are different things that you can fulfill during those chapters of your life. Although it might have one overarching purpose, but there might be one very strong dominant thing that you're doing within that purpose because of that phase of your life that you're in. And then the last one is return, right? Once you retire, or whatever, you're now giving back, and those are your twilight years, right? So
Right.
to answer your question in short, I don't think that you only have one purpose. I think people have multiple things that they can do. I can use LeBron James as an example, right? He's an athlete. He has a purpose of excelling in that area, but you also see what he's doing in the community, building schools, and using his stardom and the influence that he has and the resources that he has to fuel other things that are also passion projects for him. So I will maybe just round it out by saying individuals, we don't have a limitation to 2 things. Number 1, it's imagination. And we also don't have a limitation to determination. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine, you actually can become the person who restricts yourself, but you can imagine whatever you want. So you can dream as far as you want to go, as long as you have the determination to actually then go and pursue those things. So like, let's say, for example, when I was talking about when I was in Zimbabwe, me and my friends were all the same, right? We come from the same background. Some of them were actually better off than I am. Like their parents had better jobs than my dad and, had more money, but they were restricting their imagination. They wouldn't imagine themselves in America because for them to be like, well, it'll never happen. So they're already ruling themselves out. Mm-hmm. But even if they did, but if they didn't have the determination to do what it takes to make it happen, it would never happen. One thing that I like to say is that there are 3 important days in life. Every person's life, we all have 3 important days. And your ability to identify these days and operate in your zone of genius in these 3 days will unlock so much. And day number 1 is obviously the day you're born. Welcome, world. I'm here, right? Day number 2 is the day you find out your why. Remember, we're talking about your purpose. Mm-hmm. It's super important to find that second day. A lot of people never find that, but to those who do, kudos to them, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's the 3rd day, right? And this is the one that makes the most difference. And the 3rd day is each day you act on your why. Because if you find out your why, but you never act on it and you're not doing anything, it's like, why did you even go through the process of finding out why anyway, right?
Can you find your why through, like you talked about imagination and determination? do some people find their why through imagination? So they have these ideas and then they act on them and then they get some kind of outcome. And then from the outcome, they say, oh, I think this is the path I want to take. And let me try this idea. And you can kind of find your purpose just by trying things.
Yeah, there are many ways to do that. And like, that was similar to like my journey, right?
Yeah.
I had this imagination of like, I need to find out what's happening here. I became curious.
Right.
And then I found out, and then I built a determination to say like, hey, I need to fix this. It became that reason, that driver, that fuel that made me stay up, you know, in the night, applying, writing essays and doing all that stuff. I would have gone to bed and slept, right? That was the easy route. But because I was determined enough to burn the midnight oil and do what I had to do, I did that. So that covers purpose. Are you ready for me to go to the second part, or you have more questions around purpose?
No, let's keep going.
All right. So number 2 is plan. So right, it's SPEAR. So it's S and P. So it's plan. Have you? I'm guessing you've taken a flight before, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you get on the plane, and the pilot goes like, "Hey, we don't really know how we're gonna get to New York City. We're just gonna wing it and we'll figure it out on our way there." Like, how are you gonna feel?
I would get off that plane.
You'd get off that. Why?
Because I don't know where I'm going. I just don't know where this guy's gonna take me. Like,
Okay. But that's what a lot of people do, right? Every flight needs a flight plan. So if you're gonna be the captain pilot of your life, you need to take time planning how you're going to get to your destination, right? So similar to like how pilots really sit down and say like, okay, we're in LA right now. This is how we're going to fly to New York City. Yes, they might bump into turbulence. Yes, other things might come up. A plan is not static. A plan is dynamic. But having a plan from the beginning enables you to deal with whatever life will throw at you, right? Because you're prepared, you're better prepared, and you can then pivot, make pivots, and then you eventually get there. But a lot of the time, you have a lot of people who are just living life as spectators. So instead of them going into the cockpit and flying that plane, they're going into the back seat and say like, hey, someone else fly the plane for my life. So once you find your purpose, you need to own it. You need to sit in that captain's seat and fly it. But you just don't sit into the captain's seat and fly the plane. First of all, you need to come up with a plan. So that's why I'm saying every flight needs a flight plan. So that's P in SPEAR method. So let's bring it home. I'm a blogger, right? Or I'm a budding blogger, and I want to write a blog about traveling. Well, you need to come up with a plan. Like, what are you going to be talking about when it comes to traveling? Is it you traveling? Is it other people? You're gonna need to think through like what are the keywords, right? Because writing, blogging, for example, a lot of people just think that it's an art. You have to be a good writer. But if you want to be successful online, there's a science to it, right? Because you need to understand, how does Google rank blogs? How do they rank websites? Because if you want so many people to see your blog, you need to understand the science of writing content in a way that will be indexed well by Google. What are the keywords that you need to use? What are the styles and formats that these spiders, when they're crawling the website, like how to write in a way that your articles are graded well by all these search engines. So you need to plan that. You need to learn that. So yes, you might be a good writer. You might be talented in that capacity. But if you want to be a successful blogger, you're going to need to sit down and plan and learn the science, right? The algorithms, how those things work, that will enable you to take off and arrive at your destination, fast.
Right.
So that's the planning piece, and that's kind of like a practical thing that the bloggers and some of the authors who are listening in need to learn. So like for me, for example, I didn't consider myself a writer. So when I started writing the book, I had to learn certain things. I had to come up with a plan, a schedule on when I'm going to write, how, and being consistent, which actually leads to the second point, which is E, and it's execute. So again, if you come up with a plan, but you actually don't execute, right? Failing to plan is planning to fail. Execution is key, right? And why do I say that? So let's use the spear, right, as an example. Since I'm from Africa, let's say you go hunting and you see your deer and you're holding your spear, right? And then you just put a little bit of effort to the point that the spear doesn't even like go 10 feet, it falls down. Because you only just put very little velocity, right? Mm-hmm. If you really want to pierce and make a kill, you're going to have to put a lot of velocity. And the thrust that you give that spear is the action that you take. So taking action is what drives the results. And for me, for example, in order for me to finish my book in 18 months, I had to find time, right? So I had to create a plan as to like, okay, I'm a busy executive. I'm creating a business. I'm doing all these things. My life is already busy, but I need to create this book. I need to turn this vision into reality. I need to carve out the time. So I had to change my schedule, planning. And my schedule was on the train to Manhattan, because I take a train from New Jersey to the city where my office is. That was my writing time. So I would write on the train back and forth. So I was able to then execute during that time. If I didn't do that, it was going to be very hard for me to write the book or even finish it because I wasn't executing. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing with your blog. You know, how often are you writing? How consistent are you? And especially if you want to build an audience and really connect with that audience, consistency is key. Look at some of the top bloggers out there, right? They have a consistent schedule, right? When are they dropping their articles? If it's weekly, once a week on a certain day, the blogs are dropping. So you're going to need to be consistent in delivering your content. If you're a writer, you're also going to need to be consistent in not just the book, but if you're trying to build an audience, once you launch, you're going to be consistent in delivering content to your community, even if it's sections from the book or framework from the book, other things to really support that book launch and engage that audience. Look at all the different authors out there that are crushing it, like Simon Sinek and all these other guys. They're out there and they're consistent in their execution, even once they've written the book. Writing the book is the easy part. Like getting it out there, getting people to read it, that's where the work begins. So doing the interviews and so forth and so forth. So execution is super powerful.
And I think that's what a lot of writers and bloggers miss is how much work goes into after the first work. Like you finish your writing and then there's a lot to do after that. But I think a lot of writers are just, because they work in isolation, they're a little apprehensive about just putting themselves out there and doing speaking engagements and public events. And what do you say to those people who just are scared to take that step and be seen?
I'll say that your comfort zone will kill you.
Ooh.
Right? If you want to grow, if you want to do anything meaningful, you have to step outside your comfort zone. When you step outside of your comfort zone, that's where the miracles happen, right? Or like that's where the magic happens. But if you stay in your comfort zone, nothing extraordinary happens because you're in your comfort zone. So I did something outside of my comfort zone, and that's why I'm here today. Like I wrote a book. I'm not I used to tell myself the story that I'm not a writer, but I decided to shift my self-talk and say like, hey, you can do it. If you can imagine it, you can do it. You're going to figure out a way to do it. And I did. And I was outside of my comfort zone. But by being outside of my comfort zone, I was able to learn something new. Like nobody is born you know, riding a bicycle, for example. You have to learn, you have to get outside of your comfort zone and learn how to balance. If you tell a baby or like a toddler, like, hey, you just need to balance, what does balance mean? They have to do it. They have to get outside their comfort zone and feel it and fall down a couple of times for them to understand, oh, this is what balancing is. And this is how I ride the bicycle. So the miracle of them riding a bicycle is because they had to get outside of their comfort zone, fall a couple of times. Maybe you've had to nurse a couple of wounds and you know, have a couple of band-aids, but after that process, they can ride a bicycle. It's like second nature for them. So that's what I would tell those folks, is that if you stay in your comfort zone, you're just gonna get what you get when you stay in your comfort zone.
Right.
You know, in the book, I actually talk about that there are what I call 3 life zones. So think of them as 3 zip codes where people can live in life. The first one is your comfort zone, which we all know everybody has a comfort zone, and your brain actually loves being in the comfort zone because it gets to relax, right? It's on a metaphorical hammock and it's just chilling all day, because our brains are actually wired for survival. They're not wired for thriving, right? Your brain is just wired to make sure that you survive. If you want to thrive, you're going to have to push yourself beyond what your brain is telling you to stop. There's actually a guy who's part of the Navy SEALs. His name is David Goggins, and he believes that your brain will start telling you to stop when you've only hit 40% of your potential. So think about it. If you're staying in your comfort zone, there's 60% potential that you're missing out on, that you're not tapping into. And then the second zone is the growth zone. This is where you need to live every day, right? And the way you live in the growth zone is by what I call taking a conscious risk. And you might be thinking, Kuda, what is a conscious risk? Well, a conscious risk is you consciously knowing that, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this risk because it's going to help me grow. So for example, let's say you run 2 miles every day. You can then say like, hey, I'm going to take a conscious risk today to run an extra mile. Because by running 3 miles instead of the regular 2, I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone and now I can grow, right? It could be as simple as taking a cold shower, right? Something that just challenges you and you get to do something hard. You're stacking on, right, those moments so that when something really hard but super important comes about, you have this bank full of wins that you can draw from. It's like, hey, I'm that guy that just took that cold shower. I'm that guy who ran 3 miles instead of 2. I can do this. But if your you know, success bank is empty, you have nothing to draw from. So what's going to happen? You're just going to not do it. Right. So it's super important to do these small things that take you outside of your comfort zone. And then the third one is the dangerous zone. You don't want to be in the dangerous zone. That's like going on the highway and driving 200 miles an hour. You don't want to do that, right? Because you'll die. Or just waking up one morning and say like, hey, I'm going to take a conscious risk and I'm going to go climb Mount Everest. You don't want to do that. You need to train and so forth and so forth. So obviously there are limits to things. But what's important is you're constantly stepping outside of your comfort zone. So if you're a blogger or if you're an author, think about what are the things that you haven't done that if you were to do would maybe bring more traffic to your website, i.e. go on a blog, right? I was always I was frightened by the stage. I would never want to go in front of people, but I had to overcome that because I had to grow.
Right.
And now I get to be on Zoom calls with you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast today, and someone said that there's a poll taken of Americans, and the top 2 fears, the first fear, number 1 fear for people is speaking in public. The number two fear is death. So most people are more scared of speaking in public than they are of dying, which I found that's just amazing.
I know.
Yeah,
So that's that. And then, does that answer your question?
it does. And I think I'm ready for A in Spear.
Yeah. So A is achieve. So once you execute, you're going to achieve something. So it could be achieving 100% of what you were trying to achieve, or it's even 1%. But the biggest achievement, though, I would tell you, is that very first step you take outside of your comfort zone, because that's when the growth begins. And you would find that in the achievement zone, let's say you achieve 20% of what you're trying to accomplish, you quickly learn that you might need other people around you. So in the book, I talk about, in real estate, they always say location, location, location. In life, it should always be collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. You need
Mm.
other people around you, right? You were talking about having a team. Yes, when I was writing my book, I needed a copy editor. I needed someone to go read it through and see, like, hey, are there, like, typos, the punctuation, is it correct, and things like that. So that's part of the achievement piece, is that if you really want to achieve exponential results, you need to have other people around you to help you with your vision and your purpose, right? If
Right.
you're a
That's why
blogger,
it's so important to have people surround you who are high energy, right? You don't
yeah,
want to hang around a lot of low energy, complaining, negative people.
mhm. You're the average of the five closest people to you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's achieve. And then the last one is repeat. And repeat is interesting, because you were talking about, does a person have one purpose? And my answer to you was, like, my personal opinion is, I don't think so. Like, you might have one overarching one, but there might be, like, sub purposes that you live out through your life. But what's important is that, like, let's say, for instance, right now, my goal with Nonbelievable is we want to feed 1 million people in 2 years. So let's say it does happen in 2 years, we feed 1 million people. Should I retire? Should I now go, on a beach somewhere in Mexico and just have margaritas the rest of my life? No, I'll have to repeat the same process. I'm going to go and think about what's the next big, hairy, audacious goal that I want to do that's in alignment with my purpose, create a plan around it. So now maybe we say, like, okay, let's feed 10 million, or let's feed 1 billion. What the heck, right? And once I said that, then I need to come up with a plan. And then once I come up with a plan, what is the next thing I need to do, Ebony?
After you come up with your plan, you need to take action, execute.
You need to execute. And then you achieve something, and maybe you'll see, like, oh my God, achieving this goal of feeding 1 billion people, I probably need more people around me. And that's part of the achievement process, and you repeat that process until you're done. So that's the SPEAR method. And what I've realized after I wrote the book and published it is that there's actually an extra chapter, right? So there's a link in my book that has the extra chapter, and the extra chapter is an S at the end of SPEAR, so it's now SPEARs.
Oh.
Because what's better than having one spear is having 2 or more spears. And what the other S stands for is stay, open to possibility.
Yes.
You want to stay open to possibilities, because then you might find out in your quest of going somewhere that, oh, there's something bigger and better that I could actually do. So, like, let's say for me, for example, I had to stay open to possibilities. So when that call came to say, like, hey, do you want to come build this cookie company with us? Although I was in corporate America, I had a really good job, I became open to the possibility of, like, you know what? I can actually go do this. I can go and work with these guys, and we can feed and change a lot of lives. But I had to be open to that possibility.
Right.
Because if I wasn't open to it, then I'll be like, hey guys, I'm fine with what I'm doing. I'm in my comfort zone, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah. I don't
Right.
want to take a risk. But sometimes if you really want to achieve success and fulfillment, which was the case for me, I had to stay open to that possibility, because my corporate job was giving me success. I wasn't fulfilled. But because I was open to the possibility of going and trying something new, something that would, give me fulfillment, I was then able to find both. So that's the bonus chapter. It's not in the book, but if you buy the book, there's a link in the book where you can actually then go read the Stay Open to Possibilities chapter. But that's the last one. And
that's huge. That's really
yeah.
big, because I think a lot of people, they get so narrow sighted, and they only see what's in this box that they're in. Like, they can't see outside of the box, and that just keeps them trapped. And so I think this is why a lot of people just feel like they're stuck. It's like you're stuck because you can't see outside of this box that you're in. There are so many other possibilities for yourself, but I think we get mired in the bad feelings of where we are, like the frustration, that we just don't see the possibilities.
Yeah. So I'll bring it home to, let's say, if you're a blogger and you're trying to build an audience, you might want to stay open to the possibility of going beyond just blogging. Perhaps start a YouTube channel, right? Because you need to think about it, that there are some people who need the content that you have, but they don't read blogs. There may be podcast people who want your information. So is there a way that you can be open to the possibility of maybe recording that content and turning it into a podcast, turning it into a YouTube channel, and things like that. So that's what I mean by staying open to possibilities, because then you can then start to think about how you can repurpose that same content into different formats so that you can actually reach more people. And what's interesting is, let's talk about YouTube, for example. Do you know that YouTube is the only social media platform where your content over time actually grows in terms of, let's say, viewership? So like, let's say on Instagram, right? If you post a story, it goes away in 24 hours. So people won't be able to see that content anymore. If you post a picture, it gets pushed down, down. So people will only be seeing what's at the top of your profile, unless if they scroll all the way to the bottom. But on YouTube, they reward you for when people listen to your content, for a long time, and they stay there, they'll start showing you organically. So that's why if you post a video, over time, if it's really good content, you actually see that you actually have more viewership over time, and it might even have more engagement over time, but no other platform does that. Even a blog, right? So with your blog, if you've written it today, 10 years from now, Google is going to consider it not relevant, right? Because there's newer content that say like, oh, this was written 3 months ago. It's much more relevant and present. So you might still have good content, but because it's 10 years old and you haven't updated it, it gets pushed down in the search results. So nobody's going to be opening page 7, right? People are always page 1, 2, and maybe 3. But on YouTube, that's why you will see like your content will gain more viewership over time, because the algorithm will be saying like, oh, a million people have seen this and they like it, and they've seen like 90% of this video. So we need to show it more. We need to reward this content to show it more. So you need now to stay open to that possibility of like, hey, maybe I need to branch out into other platforms that might give me more visibility. And yes, you can have call to actions to drive that traffic to your blog, but that's kind of like the mindset I'm referring to, where I'm saying stay open to possibility.
This was great. I mean, you gave us so much information. You have all these gems of wisdom. I was just taking notes like crazy, and I hope that anyone watching this is taking notes. And I'm sad that we're out of time. I mean, I feel like we have so much more to talk about. I mean, each of these points, there's so much we could dive into. But I do want to seriously invite you back for like a book chat, because even though we kind of went over the outline of the book, I still think that there's a lot that our viewers would really benefit from this.
So let's do this. Get the book, read it, and once you're done with it, shoot me a note, and we can schedule time to make it happen.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much. I will do that.
All right, cool.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. This is wonderful. You're very wise, and we'll talk soon.
We will talk soon, Ebony.
Tell people where they can find you, please.
Yeah, you can find me on the internet. So you can go to spearmethod.com. So that's the website for my book. So there you'll be able to connect with me directly. You can connect with me in the contact form. You can buy my book. But if you want to slide in the DMs and ask me a question and whatnot, you can just search Kuda Biza, Kuda Biza on Instagram. I actually didn't have an Instagram until I published the book because my publisher was like, dude, you need to be on Instagram. So I had to stay open to possibilities of that and step outside my comfort zone. So I'm still new. I'm learning the platform. And yeah, those are ways where you can connect with me.
Okay, great. And I will post those links. And if there are any more links that you want posted, just shoot them to me. And I will be in contact with you shortly to let you know when your episode's going to air.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye, Kuda. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Isn't that a great conversation? I mean, everything that came out of his mouth was like a gem of wisdom. When he talked about operating in your purpose and taking action and staying open to possibilities, I mean, these are all things that I strive to do like every day. I always want to take action on an idea that I have because I know that if I overthink it, I am not going to take action. I'm just going to get stuck in fear that it's going to flop. And it probably will not run smoothly or might flop the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time. But you just keep going. You keep trying, right? I mean, it's eventually something good is going to come out of it. I mean, I think when I was a Girl Scout selling Girl Scout cookies, how many times did I get told no? Like, do you want to buy a box of cookies? No. Do you want to buy a box of cookies? No. And it didn't even really, maybe it did bother me. I don't remember, but I just remember feeling like, okay, they said no, but eventually someone is going to say yes, right? There's always that moment of victory. So I hope that you guys got a lot out of that, and I really enjoy talking to Kuda. And I have to tell you, speaking of cookies, I did purchase a box of his non-believable cookies. I am not getting paid to do this. He doesn't even know I purchased a box. But they are, guys, unbelievably delicious. I love a good soft baked cookie, and these are soft baked, and they're thick, and they're chewy, and they're wonderful. And if you buy a box of 12, you're also helping to feed a family in need. So I hope that you try them because they're really good and you're helping the family. Next week, we have another wonderful person. We have Kylie LaBelle. She is a writer who has been published in New York Magazine. She's been published in LA Times. She's been published in, I think it's The Atlantic, either The Atlantic or Washington Post. I can't remember. But she's going to be here to talk about the process of sending your work out to be published. She's also going to share about the process of writing personal essays. So I hope that you tune in for that conversation because she's great. And then after that, we have the following week, we have a wonderfully fun person. Her name is Melanie Hirschhorn. She's a marketer. She is the founder of VIP Digital Marketing, I think is the name of her company, but she's just great fun. And she's going to teach us about how to use various social medias to help promote our blogs and whatever projects we're working on. She's going to tell us how to use Pinterest, which I never understood how to use Pinterest. So I hope that you tune in to that conversation also. Thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.